The neural interface hummed against Daniel's temple as he monitored the bioscan readings from station Kepler 442b. 3 years into deep space research, and nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Orla's vitals are spiking again," he said, his voice tight with concern. Dr. Sarah Chen leaned over his shoulder, studying the holographic display. Orla's brain activity showed patterns they'd never documented before: rapid firing in the amygdala, heightened activity in the visual cortex, and something else. Something that made Daniel's skin prickle with atavistic fear. "That's the 4th time this week," Sarah murmured, "always when she's near the specimen tanks." Orla stood in the xenobiology lab, her face pressed close to the reinforced glass of Tank 7. Inside, the organism they'd retrieved from Kepler 442b's methane seas writhed in its suspension fluid. It was unlike anything in Earth's evolutionary tree, a creature of translucent membranes and bioluminescent nodes that pulsed with alien consciousness. But Daniel wasn't watching the creature, he was watching Orla. Her pupils had dilated to nearly twice their normal size, swallowing the blue of her irises until her eyes appeared wholly black. The phenomenon had started 3 weeks ago, shortly after she'd begun her direct study of the organism. At first, they'd attributed it to low light conditions in the lab, then to stress, then to nothing at all, because admitting what the biosensors were telling them seemed impossible. "I'm going in," Daniel said, disconnecting from the interface. Sarah grabbed his arm. "Wait, look at her dopamine levels and the norepinephrine." "I see them." Daniel's jaw clenched. The readings suggested a predatory state, the kind of neurochemical cascade that occurred in apex hunters moments before a kill. "That's exactly why I need to go in." The lab's airlock cycled with agonizing slowness. Through the observation window, Daniel watched Orla raise her hand to the glass. The creature inside mirrored her movement, its membrane appendage spreading against the barrier between them. The bioluminescent nodes across its body flared in sequence, a pattern that repeated with mathematical precision. Communication, Daniel realized with a chill. They're communicating. The inner door hissed open. Orla didn't turn at his approach, her entire focus locked on the tank. Up close, he could see the minute tremors in her hands, the slight parting of her lips, the rapid pulse at her throat. Every physiological marker screamed predator-prey dynamics, but which role was she playing? "Orla," he said softly, "can you hear me?" "It's beautiful," she whispered. Her voice carried a strange harmonic quality, as if 2 vocal registers were speaking in unison. "It wants to show me something, Daniel, something humans were never meant to see." He moved to her side carefully, the way one might approach a wild animal. Through the glass, the creature's form shifted, its translucent body reorganizing into new configurations. Patterns emerged and dissolved, fractal geometries that hurt to look at directly, shapes that seemed to exist in more dimensions than Daniel's eyes could properly process. "What is it showing you?" "The universe as it truly is." Orla's pupils dilated further, impossibly wide. "Not the narrow slice of electromagnetic radiation we call visible light, not the limited spectrum of sounds we hear. Everything, Daniel, the quantum foam, the dark matter scaffolding, the gravity wells singing their endless songs." Her hand touched the glass, the creature touched back. And Daniel saw it happen. The bioluminescent nodes on the creature's body synchronized with Orla's neural patterns, visible on his wrist-mounted biosensor. Her brain waves, which should have been uniquely human, were modulating to match the alien's electromagnetic emissions. Not perfectly, but close enough to establish resonance. "Jesus Christ," he breathed. "It's not communication, it's neurological synchronization." Orla turned to face him, and Daniel's every instinct screamed at him to run. Her eyes were still dilated, but now he could see the reason. Her pupils weren't expanding to gather more light, they were restructuring themselves. Tiny geometric patterns rippled across the surface of her irises, formations that resembled the fractal shapes the creature had been displaying. The transformation was subtle, nearly imperceptible, but undeniably there. "It's not hostile, Daniel." Her voice had lost that harmonic quality, returning to something more recognizably human, but the patterns in her eyes remained. "It's terrified." Terrified, Daniel forced himself to hold his ground. Of what? Of us? Of what we represent? Orla's hand dropped from the glass, and the creature inside retreated to the far corner of its tank. "It's a prey species, Daniel. On its world, it exists near the bottom of a cognitive food chain we can't even begin to comprehend. It's evolved to perceive threats across multiple sensory dimensions, to read predator behavior in the quantum fluctuations of neural firing patterns." She stepped closer to him, and Daniel's biosensor shrieked a warning. His cortisol levels were spiking, his amygdala firing with fight-or-flight urgency. But why? Orla had been his colleague for 3 years, his friend. She'd never shown him anything but kindness. "And when it looks at us," Orla continued, "at humans, it sees apex predators. Not because of our teeth or claws, but because of our minds. The way we dissect and analyze, the way we reduce complex systems to their component parts so we can master them. To this creature, that analytical thinking looks exactly like predatory focus." Daniel understood then. The dilating pupils, the predator state neurochemistry, it was a mirror response. Orla's nervous system had begun adopting the creature's threat detection framework, seeing her own species through the lens of prey survival instincts. "The synchronization has to stop," he said firmly. "We need to end the study, put the creature in stasis." "It's too late for that." Orla's smile was sad, resigned. "The synchronization isn't revering, Daniel. Every time I interface with it, my neural plasticity increases. My brain is rewiring itself to perceive what it perceives. And once you see humans as predators, really see it, in your amygdala and your hindbrain where instinct lives, you can't unsee it." She turned back to the tank. The creature had emerged from its corner, drawn by some invisible signal. The bioluminescent nodes pulsed in that same mathematical sequence. "I watch you all now," Orla said quietly. "You, Sarah, the rest of the crew, and I see it in everything you do. The way you move through the station like you own it, like everything here exists for your consumption and study. The way you plan and scheme and optimize. Pure predatory cognition, refined over millions of years of evolutionary success." Daniel's hand moved to the emergency comm on his collar. One press would summon security, initiate containment protocols. But something held him back, perhaps the part of him that knew Orla was right. "What do we do?" he asked. "We learn," Orla replied. "We adapt. Because if this creature's perceptual framework is any indication, the galaxy is full of species who see us exactly as it does. And when we finally meet them, when humanity spreads beyond our solar system and encounters civilizations that evolved with different survival pressures, they're going to see the predator in us before they see anything else." She placed both hands on the glass now, and the creature mirrored her completely. The synchronization was total, their neural patterns locked in perfect resonance. "The question isn't whether I can go back to seeing the world as I did before," Orla said. "The question is whether humanity can learn to recognize the predator in itself and choose to be something different." Daniel stood in the lab, biosensor screaming warnings, watching his colleague commune with an alien mind. In her dilated pupils, he saw the reflection of the creature's bioluminescence. And in that light, he caught a glimpse of what she was seeing: the human species as predator, analytical and relentless, moving through the cosmos with the focused intention of a hunter tracking prey. The neural interface against his temple suddenly felt like a cage, limiting his perception to the narrow bandwidth of human experience. For the first time, Daniel wondered what revelations lay beyond those limits, and whether humanity was ready to face them. In Tank 7, the creature pulsed its message into the darkness, and Orla translated with eyes that were no longer entirely human, speaking truths that her kind had been too predatory to hear. Until now, they notice her pupils dilating when looking at them. Predator focus activated. Prey instinct screamed. 17 Deck 1/2. They notice her pupils dilating when looking at them. Predator focus activated. Prey instinct screamed. The cargo bay of the Meridian outpost maintained a steady 18 degrees C, but Daniel felt ice crystallize along his spine as he watched Orla through the observation deck's reinforced window. Her pupils were dilating again. Not the gradual adjustment to dim lighting that human physiology dictated, but rapid, predatory expansions, contracting to pinpoints before blooming into dark voids that swallowed her irises whole. The cycle repeated every 2.3 seconds, synchronized with something Daniel couldn't see but could measure on his handheld biosensor. Neural activity is off the charts, muttered Dr. Vikram Zhao, the outpost's neuroscientist, his fingers dancing across a holographic interface. Her amygdala is firing like she's in active combat, but look at her frontal cortex. It's quiet, too quiet. Whatever she's experiencing, it's bypassing conscious thought entirely. Daniel pressed closer to the glass. Below, Orla circled the containment pod they'd recovered from the derelict generation ship Ashoka. The pod's surface was smooth, featureless obsidian that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. According to the ship's corrupted logs, it had been sealed for 147 years, since the Ashoka's crew encountered something in the outer veil and went silent. They'd found the ship 3 weeks ago, its corridors empty except for the pod and a series of cryptic warnings scratched into bulkheads. Don't look at it. Don't let it look at you. The eyes are windows. Orla had insisted on examining the artifact personally. She was the expedition's xenoarchaeologist, after all, specializing in first contact protocols. But from the moment she'd entered the cargo bay, something had changed. "I'm going down there," Daniel said, moving toward the access ladder. Vikram grabbed his shoulder. "Wait, her cortisol levels just tripled, and Daniel, her ocular muscles are moving in patterns that shouldn't be anatomically possible. Whatever's happening to her, it's not psychological, it's physiological. Then she needs medical intervention. Or we need to understand what we're dealing with before we expose another crew member." Daniel shook off Vikram's hand. He'd known Orla for 6 years, survived 2 deep space expeditions with her. Whatever was happening, he wouldn't leave her alone with it. The cargo bay's atmosphere tasted metallic as he descended the ladder, his boots clanging against metal rungs. Orla didn't acknowledge his arrival. Her focus remained absolute, locked on the containment pod with an intensity that made every prey instinct Daniel possessed scream warnings into his hindbrain. "Orla," he said carefully, keeping his voice level, "can you hear me?" She tilted her head, a movement too fluid, too serpentine for comfort. When she spoke, her voice carried undertones that hadn't been there before, harmonic frequencies that made his teeth ache. "It's not what we thought, Daniel." Her pupils dilated again, holding their expanded state for 5 full seconds this time. "The Ashoka's crew, they didn't die, they evolved." "Evolved?" Daniel approached slowly, hands visible and non-threatening. "Orla, you're not making sense. The ship was empty. No bodies, no survivors." "Because they're not bodies anymore." She pressed her palm against the pod's surface, and Daniel saw something that made his stomach drop. The obsidian material rippled beneath her touch, responding to her contact. "This isn't a containment vessel, it's a chrysalis." Vikram's voice crackled through Daniel's calm implant. "Daniel, get away from that thing." Her neural patterns just synchronized with an electromagnetic field emanating from the pod. "I'm reading frequencies that shouldn't exist in nature." Orla spun to face Daniel, and he stumbled backward. Her pupils had dilated beyond anything human biology allowed, expanding until no iris remained visible. Just 2 perfect black circles that seemed to extend infinitely into her skull. But worse than that were the things moving behind them. shadows that twisted with geometric precision, forms that his brain refused to properly process. "Do you know what predation really is?" Orla asked, stalking toward him. Her gait had changed, become something calculated and efficient. "We think of it as teeth and claws, as violence and consumption. But that's just the physical expression. True predation is cognitive. It's the ability to model another consciousness, to predict behavior, to see the universe through prey eyes so completely that you can anticipate their every move before they make it." Daniel's hand found the emergency beacon on his belt. One press would seal the cargo bay, trap them both inside until the security team could respond. But Orla was still in there somewhere. He had to believe that. "The thing in the pod," she continued, circling him now, "it's a predator that evolved on a world where consciousness itself was the primary hunting ground. It doesn't eat flesh, it consumes cognitive patterns. And when the Ashoka's crew looked into it, it looked back. It modeled them, learned them, became them." Her pupils contracted suddenly, then dilated again, a rhythm that matched Daniel's own heartbeat. With creeping horror, he realized she was tracking his pulse through micro-expressions he didn't even know he was making. "Orla, fight it," he said, backing toward the ladder. "Whatever's happening, you're still you. You can." "Can I?" she laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "My hippocampus has restructured itself over the past 3 weeks, new neural pathways forming along patterns that only make sense in n-dimensional space. I can see things now, Daniel. Probability clouds of your future actions, the electromagnetic signature of your fear, the way your pupils dilate when you look at me, just like mine did when I first looked at the pod." She was right. Daniel could feel it, his pupils expanding involuntarily, driven by an autonomic response to threat. Predator and prey, locked in an ancient dance of recognition. "The crew of the Ashoka tried to contain it," Orla said, her voice dropping to something that might have been grief. "They built this pod, sealed the entity inside, but they'd already been compromised. Their eyes had already changed. So they wrote their warnings and scattered themselves across the ship's hull, exposing themselves to vacuum rather than let the predator spread." She touched her own face, fingers tracing the contours of her altered eyes. "They were brave. They understood that once a predator learns to model you perfectly, once it can see through your eyes and predict your thoughts, you're not separate from it anymore. You've become an extension of its hunting strategy." Daniel's thumb hovered over the emergency beacon. "Then why are you still here? Why haven't you?" "Evolved, scattered," Orla smiled, and for a moment she looked like herself again, his colleague, his friend. "Because I'm fighting it, Daniel. Every second. The entity wants me to open the pod, to release it into the station's atmosphere where it can propagate through the crew. It's showing me how. I can see the locking mechanism's quantum encryption, understand its architecture in ways that shouldn't be possible." Her pupils dilated one more time, and Daniel saw his own reflection in those dark voids. Small, afraid, perfectly understood. "But I'm also human," she continued, voice trembling with effort. "And humans are predators too. We've evolved our own cognitive hunting strategies, empathy, theory of mind, social modeling. We can think about thinking, predict others' predictions. We're already apex predators of the consciousness niche." She moved faster than Daniel's enhanced reflexes could track, grabbing his hand and pressing it against the pod's surface. The obsidian felt warm, alive, and hungry beneath his palm. His pupils dilated involuntarily as information flooded his visual cortex, geometric patterns that encoded entire hunting strategies, prey models refined over millions of years of evolution, in an ecology where minds were the ultimate resource. "Do you see it now?" Orla whispered. "The thing in the pod looks at us and sees competition, not prey. We're the first species it's encountered that hunts the same niche it does. That's why it's been dormant so long, it's afraid." Daniel tore his hand away, but the damage was done. He could feel new pathways forming in his brain, his visual processing centers reorganizing themselves around predatory pattern recognition. When he looked at Orla now, he saw probabilities. the likelihood she'd move left versus right, the micro-expressions that betrayed her next words before she spoke them. "Vikram," he gasped into his calm, "initiate full quarantine. No one else comes into this bay." "Daniel, what's happening?" "We're in a cognitive arms race," Daniel said, watching Orla watch him watching her, each of them modeling the other's mental state in recursive loops that threatened to spiral into infinite regress. "And I don't know if humanity's ready for it." Orla nodded slowly. The entity taught the Ashoka's crew to see like predators, perfect, ruthless efficiency, but it didn't account for human stubbornness, our ability to hold contradictory impulses simultaneously, to be predator and protector, hunter and guardian. She moved to the cargo bay's control panel, fingers dancing across the interface with inhuman precision. The pod began to sink into the deck plating, emergency containment protocols engaging. "I'm sealing it in the reactor's magnetic containment field," she explained. "The M interference will disrupt its ability to project its cognitive patterns. But Daniel," her voice cracked, and he heard the terror beneath her words, "my eyes won't change back. The neural restructuring is permanent. I'll spend the rest of my life seeing humans as prey species." Daniel understood what she was saying. The predatory focus would remain, that ability to read intention and predict behavior with unsettling accuracy. She'd be isolated, feared, a constant reminder of the thing they'd found in the dark. "Then we'll adapt," he said firmly. "You learn to see like a predator, we'll learn to live with being seen." Orla's pupils dilated one final time, and Daniel met her gaze without flinching. His own eyes were changing too. He could feel it in the way colors seemed sharper, patterns more obvious. They were both compromised now, altered by contact with something that hunted minds the way humans hunted game. But they were still human, still capable of choosing mercy over efficiency, cooperation over consumption. The pod locked into containment with a resonant hum. In the observation deck above, Vikram would be documenting everything, preparing reports that would reshape humanity's first contact protocols. Because now they knew, somewhere in the galaxy were predators that made humans look like prey. And humanity would need to evolve if they wanted to survive the encounter. Daniel extended his hand to Orla. She took it, her grip strong and steady despite the tremors he could see in her biosensor readings. "We'll face it together," he said. Her pupils contracted briefly, almost a smile. "Together," she agreed, "even if we have to do it with predator eyes." In the magnetic containment below, the entity pulsed once, testing its prison, then went still. Waiting. Always waiting. Because predators knew patience better than anyone.